Hi friends, welcome back. So in this video, I'll be discussing about some of the important test cases issues which we normally face while we writing the test cases. So I'll be going through around 25 issues, which is real-time issues, which I am going to discuss in this video. The first issue is incorrect or ambiguous test case requirement. If you have any ambitious test case requirements or incorrect requirements, then you will have an issue with your test cases. If you take an example, if any requirement something like that, validate login functionality, but here your test cases does not speaks about whether it is a successful or unsuccessful login attempts. That is the first issue which we normally face. The second issue which we face is test case steps that are not sequenced logically. This is very crucial, especially whenever we are trying to execute the test cases. All our test cases should be sequenced logically. Otherwise, it is very difficult to execute that test case. If you take an example, if test case instruct to select an item and then click on the cancel button without giving any specific order, it is very difficult to reproduce the issue. We're just selecting something and we are trying to click on cancel without specifying what kind of order we have to follow in a given test case. And the second issue is lack of test data or inadequate coverage of different data scenarios. This is very crucial. If you do not have a right test data, definitely you will have a big challenge whenever you are executing the test cases. Lack of test data, if you can give example here, test cases does not include test data for different user roles or input variants. If you have that kind of issue where you do not have enough roles in your test data, we cannot test your application with all the different roles. That could lead a big challenges in the future days. Fourth issue is missing or incorrect expected results. This is also a big challenge. If you do not clearly call out what is the expected results in your test case, that become a big issue. Here, test case expects an error message to be displayed, but your test case does not specify what kind of error messages is expected. You should clearly call that out. If expected message is exit, then you should call that out as a exit. That's why you should have a clear expected message as part of your expected results section in a given test case. And the next issue is test cases that do not cover edge cases or boundary conditions. Here we are talking more about a negative cases of a test cases. Whenever the test cases which we write, if that do not have edge or boundary condition, then it becomes a big challenge where we are not trying to cover negative test cases. Hence, it is always recommended, apart from a normal range of test data, you should also go for edge cases or boundary conditions as part of our test case executions. And the next issue is repetition of test cases leading to redundancy. Whenever we are trying to write test cases, initial phase of our testing, we may not face this kind of issue. As the test cases increases or our testers number increases, it may happen that whatever test cases which we are written, sometimes it becomes redundant or duplicate as well. In order to get that issue resolved, what we have to do is we have to do a regular review should happen so that we can compare with the existing test cases, and we wanted to see whether this test case is a duplicate or redundant whenever we are trying to write the new test cases. And the next one is the test cases that are too complex or difficult to understand is also another challenge. Sometimes the test cases we write in such a way that the test cases can have multiple conditional statements, complex calculations within a given test steps. That time it becomes very complex to understand. If I have written the test cases, if other persons read the test cases, then you will get into a problem. That's where we should write a test cases in a more simple and easy manner, so that if anybody wants to execute tomorrow, you should have a clarity of the test cases. Even the requirement is complex, you should write the test cases in so simple manner, so that whoever execute your test cases, you should be able to execute your test cases in a simple and easy manner. And the eighth issue is incomplete test case description or missing preconditions. This kind of issues also we see where the test cases can have lack of information about necessary preconditions for executing the test steps successfully. And the next one is issue 9, the test cases that do not cover all specified requirements or user story. Example, test cases does not address a specific requirements mentioned in the functional specification document. That is also a major issue. And the next issue of the test case is lack of validation checks to verify input constraints or error messages. For this issue, the example is test cases does not include verification of maximum or minimum input length or validation error message is also a key here. Whenever we are trying to write the test cases, you should all have a key understanding that all the lengths or input lengths or validation of error message should be appropriate whenever we are writing the test cases. And the 11th issue is test cases that do not account for different environments or platforms. Whenever we write the test cases, we should not write the test cases just for one platform or one browser combination. You should be able to write across different cross browsers or different platforms, so that whenever we're trying to execute the test cases, we can execute appropriately for different operating systems or different browsers. And the 12th issue is the test cases that do not consider the performance or scalability testing. Whenever we write the test cases, we should also consider the test cases should cover load testing or stress testing scenarios, as well as a performance benchmark which is under user specific loads. That kind of test cases also you should cover as part of your test cases. And the next test case is inadequate coverage of negative scenarios or error handling. This is also we just talked about, where we are not talking about your negative conditions or boundary conditions or invalid inputs or error conditions. If it is not there, then your test cases are not up to the mark. You should cover different things apart from positive scenarios as well. And the next 14th issue is test cases that are not updated to reflect the changes in the application. What happens as the application grows, your test cases also will grow. And if something changed in your application, if something is changed in your application, same thing is not reflected in your test cases, then that becomes a big issue, because we will try to fail a test case even the requirements are already changed. That is also a key thing you should remember whenever you are talking about issues with test cases. And also next issue is dependencies between test cases that are not properly accounted for. Especially if there is a dependencies between one test cases to another test case is a very important or very key where test cases assumes the availability of specific data or completions of preceded test cases without explicit mention or validation. That is also very important here. And the 16th issue is inconsistent naming convention or formatting in test case documentation. Whenever we write a test cases, we should adhere to the common standards, conventions or formatting. Otherwise, every tester, if he writes or she writes in a different way, it is very difficult to understand what kind of test cases is this, or what kind of style of the test cases is this, or what kind of functionality is this, or what kind of category of these test cases belongs. Everything should clearly document as part of your test case documentation or convention, so that if anyone follows the convention guidelines for the test cases, it is very easy for them to write the good test cases. And the 17th issue is test cases that do not account localization or international requirement. It is also another issue. Whenever if the requirement says that you should cover your test case related to different English languages or different country languages, different local languages, then your application should be able to support that, and you should also write your test cases accordingly so that we can verify. Apart from functional testing, you should also going to verify these localization or internationalization, especially if it is different language formats and different countries as well. And the 18th issue is insufficient coverage of usability or accessibility testing. The test cases, example here, the test cases does not cover user experience aspects such as font sizes, color constraints, or keyboard accessibility. These are some of the good scenarios, especially related to usability or accessibility testing. And the next one is 19th is the test cases which lacks for integration or interoperability testing. And the 20th issues related to test cases are test cases that do not include cleanup or recovery steps. Any test cases, whenever we are trying to execute, you should follow the clean slate process. Clean slate process is nothing but whenever we are trying to execute the test case, whenever we use the test data, once we complete the execution of that test case execution, then you should remove the data which is created by the earlier test cases. And the issue number 29 is the test cases that do not account for security vulnerability or threats as well. That's why whenever we are trying to write the test cases, should also look for the security related aspects for your application. The 27th issues related test cases are your test cases also should cover user interactions or user interfaces is also key whenever we are trying to write the test cases. And 23rd is the test case that do not validate the performance or response time, which we just talked about. You should also cover your test case with performance topic. Whenever you are writing the performance test cases, there you should clearly call that out. What is the expectation from the customer? What kind of targets we should measure as part of your test cases? Also should document as part of your test case writing for these performance related topics. And the 24th issue is test cases that do not include assertion or verification points is also key. If you take an example here, test case executes steps but does not validate if the actual results matches with the expected is also some type of test cases issue, where if you are not written properly, then whoever execute the test cases, for them it becomes very nightmare. The last issue of the test cases is the test cases that do not address specific business domain rules. The test cases normally we overlook by not considering what is a domain or what is a business case. We should ensure whenever we are writing the test cases that should get well reviewed, and as well as we'll have to see whether these test cases whichever we are written that are really going to cover critical functionalities, critical business roles, or critical calculation that is going to impact the overall functionality of the system is also key. Whenever we are writing the test cases, that we are going to cover every aspects of the test cases, so that whenever somebody executes it, they will be in a good position, so that they can call that out to the stakeholders that what is the outcome of the overall executions of the test cases. So these are the 25 different test cases which shows that which I have talked in this video. If you guys really like this video, please give a thumbs up to this video. If you guys are not subscribed, do subscribe. Thanks for watching this video. Bye for now. Take care.